when did you start to see the opportunity that would become MetaProp?
So I shut down my walking tour startup around 2010.
And what were you doing before that?
Before that, I started my career as an investment banker. I was doing mergers and acquisitions and restructuring for a firm that's now called Solomon Partners. It's part of Natixis, a larger group. I really liked the work intellectually of investment banking. I think I struggled a little bit with the culture. They don't love, at least back then, they didn't love people who showed up to the office wearing Nike Dunk Low sneakers and things like that. But I learned a lot there. I had a really good experience. Then I went into the startup world, and I was able to grow my startup a little bit. I hadn't taken any outside capital for it, so I didn't feel pressure to grow it into the stratosphere. And so I was able to reposition myself professionally and exit that business around 2010. One of the things I'd done for that business early on was content marketing, social media marketing. A lot of my business came from websites like TripAdvisor. Facebook, Instagram had just launched, but wasn't really a marketing platform back then. So I was kind of early leveraging social media content marketing to grow my walking tour brand. My father, who started the firm Millennium Partners in 1991, is and has been a developer and landlord, large-scale mixed-use developments in America's key gateway cities. So around that time, they had just bought a new site in Los Angeles that they were looking to develop. And my dad had a hunch that the new way of entitling property in the real estate business was going to be done online. It was going to be both online and offline. The traditional method for getting community support for large-scale development was meeting with community boards, going into dingy church basements. But he believed that our generation was going to respond a lot more positively to outreach online. And he felt like he didn't have the infrastructure at his own firm to deploy these new tools that were just coming online. And keep in mind, the idea of advertising and marketing real estate on Facebook back in 2010 was highly controversial. So he brought me in effectively to do social media and content marketing for his firm, Millennium Partners. And once I was in, I had promised myself I wouldn't follow my dad's footsteps and become a real estate developer, but I was hooked on the real estate business. I fell in love with all aspects of it. I wasn't just interested in how to market it. I was interested in the development process. I became interested in the underwriting for purchasing an asset. I became interested in leasing. I even became interested in basic facilities management and how we could do that better.
I'm curious there because I feel like everyone who is involved in what we today call proptech, they started their career somewhere in real estate, and there was some kind of innate draw to real estate as an industry. Where do you think that comes from in you? Like, why are you interested in something as seemingly boring as leasing?
I had grown up in the business. My dad, before he started Millennium in the early 90s, he ran what's now called NYCEDC, the New York City Economic Development Corporation. Back then it was called the Public Development Corporation. After that, he went to run General Atlantic's real estate group, big growth equity fund, when they were still doing real estate. So I visited my first job site when I was 8 years old. I got to go up in a hoist, I got to wear a hard hat, a bunch of the workers were razzing me, are you union? What are you doing here? That kind of thing, all in good fun. But so I'd been exposed to real estate from a very early age. I became obsessed with how complex every single thing was. I became interested in how many different constituent groups were required to just get a transaction done. It wasn't just a developer, it was the lawyer, it was the architect, it was the mechanical engineer, it was the title insurance agent, it was the lender, go on and on. And then once I got more time in the business, I became obsessed with inefficiency. And because I had a software background, not necessarily as a coder, but as someone managing a team to build a mobile app, a web app for a not super complex concept, but I knew I had a hunch that there was so much more we could be doing with both software and hardware solutions to make the job of my colleagues and myself faster, more efficient, easier, more accurate. And so that was when I had the realization that I wanted to devote my career to real estate, but also I wanted to figure out how to implement technology. Also important to this evolution was I went to get my MBA at Columbia Business School. The reason I went was after getting some exposure to real estate, I realized I'd loved real estate, but I also loved early stage technology, software development, the venture ecosystem, which back then in New York City was really bubbling up. This was the era of companies like Foursquare launching here, and BetaWorks, and Kickstarter, and Union Square Ventures. Fred Wilson's blog had just become something that everybody read. So I kind of had a quarter life crisis. I didn't know, do I want to be a real estate developer? Do I want to be some sort of technology entrepreneur or technology investor? And I was lucky enough, my second year, I took a class that was taught by two of the general partners at RRE Ventures, which is one of the oldest and most successful firms here in New York. And my professors were Stu Ellman and Will Porteous, who were two of the general partners at that firm. And they asked me to write a little treatment for what my final project was going to be. The final project they assigned was a deep dive that a venture capital analyst, probably what many of the folks around here at Fifth Wall are doing on a daily basis, a deep dive into a particular subsector of technology that would be interesting. And I had an idea that I wanted to write about the issues around mobile distribution. At the time and still today, there are mainly two major players that control mobile distribution. There's Google Android, and there's Apple's App Store. And if you don't get your app on either of those stores and featured, it's very hard to get it downloaded, get eyeballs, get users. So I wrote a little treatment, was really excited. I presented it to Stu Ellman, and he said, "This is insanely boring. I don't want to read this. If you write your topic on this, I'll fail you." And I said, "Oh, well, I don't want to fail this course. I actually like it quite a bit. Is there anything else I could write about?" And he said, "Well, you're a real estate guy, right? You're from a real estate family." I said, "Yes." Like, "You know about this tech stuff too, right?" I was like, "Yeah, I had a startup. I've done a little angel investing on the side." He said, "Well, I just raised a new fund, and I have a hunch. I don't know much about real estate, but I have a hunch that real estate technology is going to get really, really big and exciting as a venture capital opportunity over the next 10 years. Would you want to write about that?" And I said, "Well, will you fail me?" He said, "Probably not. If you write about that, I'm genuinely interested in it. Maybe I'll even do one of the deals you recommend." So I did a deep dive. This is now 2012. And a lot of the companies I wrote about in that paper became now famous businesses in our industry. I wrote about VTS and Hightower. I wrote about CompStack.
So this was like a seminal white paper almost on what would become proptech.
Yeah, it was a student paper, so I wouldn't necessarily put it out today as a MetaProp white paper. But yeah, for me, it was a seminal moment in my career where I realized that I could have my cake and eat it too. I didn't have to choose between being a real estate professional and a venture capital startup professional. I could fuse the two and create value and actually excel.